over, that 4-month period of time, my email list went from about 1,100 people to over 12,000 people, right? We added up over 9,000 people in 4 months. But that's what took our business from, $5,000 a month as a coach to, okay, now we're hitting $10,000 a month. Now we're hitting $20,000 a month. We created a quiz for her. What kind of lash is right for you? We send out follow-up emails because that's part of the process, and we can dive into that a little bit later, but you got to have the follow-up emails. Well, in 2 weeks, we just looked at 5 emails, the very first emails that we sent out. Those very first emails generated $23,000 in sales in 2 weeks, over a 2-week period of time. Because we're not talking about like your BuzzFeed quizzes, which Harry Potter house do you belong in? Like, that's cute. But that's not going to help people solve their problems. It's not going to help you be seen as an expert. And it's definitely not going to help you get real insight and information that you can use to make better decisions about your content, your marketing, your products. And when you ask the right quiz questions, right, got your hook, you've got great questions, you've got really good outcomes, and you've got really, really helpful results. Like, those are the major components of a quiz that help people feel like, wow, you gave me something I didn't have before I answered those questions. And now you're seen as a trusted advisor.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Digital Trailblazers. I'm super excited to have with us Tai Goodwin. Tai, go ahead and introduce yourself and let our audience know a little bit about what you are all about.
Well, I'm Tai Goodwin, CEO of that marketing team and creator of Quiz and Grow Rich. And my claim to fame is using a quiz to generate over 9,000 leads in just 4 months. And that helped us hit the ground running with our business. And then I started doing it for my other clients. So what I do is all about lead generation, qualifying leads, segmenting leads, and automating your lead generation process.
I'm excited to dive into this. This isn't a topic that we've actually covered on this podcast yet. And I know we've had clients that have done it. We know people who are into the quiz funnel. But we haven't actually used it in our business. So I want to dive into the nitty gritty, kind of see how it's working, how people do it, give all kinds of good nuggets. But before we kind of get into that, let's back up a little bit. Like, how did you get here? Like, where did this start from you? What was your journey?
It started with my second time launching into full-time entrepreneurship. Right. So, that's a whole other conversation about failing and then coming back in. But I was leading Lead Pages. I was their technical support training managers, for those of you who have been around long enough to remember what Lead Pages is. And when I left there, I needed leads. I needed clients, to start my coaching business. And I had a group of an old list of about 2,500 names that I had not talked to in about 2.5 years. And I sent them an email saying, hey, take this quiz. And I ended up with about 500 people back on my email list in about 10 days. And that sparked this recognition and understanding was, oh, this is a really great way to get people engaged, to get them back on my list, to reactivate folks. And I did that for me. And at the time I was just doing coaching. But what I realized is that a lot of the clients that I had needed the same kind of support. And so I started doing it for my clients. So this is the typical story of evolving based on what your audience needs. That true entrepreneurship spirit, you find a problem and you fill a need. And that's how I got to be here where I am today.
So how long have you been in this space then?
We're going into our 7th year.
So Before we get into like the how of it all, I just a little teaser, if you will. Like, what are some of your proudest moments or biggest successes that you've helped your clients to achieve with this?
One of them, my biggest was my very first done for you quiz client who was in the eyelash business. And I still have the screenshots. We created a quiz for her. What kind of lash is right for you? We send out follow-up emails because that's part of the process, and we can dive into that a little bit later, but you got to have the follow-up emails. Well, in 2 weeks, we just looked at 5 emails, the very first emails that we sent out. Those very first emails generated $23,000 in sales in 2 weeks, over a 2-week period of time. $23,000 in sales from those emails that we sent out. And this was eyelashes. So these are like $47, $67. These weren't like high ticket offers. That was like amazing. We had another client who does video marketing, and she was ecstatic because we helped her conversion rate. You know, typical lead magnets, they're going to convert at 15, 20% if they're really, really good. She was seeing a 70% conversion rate. And she was ecstatic about that. So those are some of my favorite numbers, you know, when it comes to that. And then we've got my story, like I said, where, you know, I started using Facebook ads because I wasn't doing that in the beginning. And over, you know, that 4-month period of time, my email list went from about 1,100 people to over 12,000 people, right? We added up over 9,000 people in 4 months. And I was only spending about $600 a month on ads. I wasn't going broke, but that's what took our business from, you know, $5,000 a month as a coach to, okay, now we're hitting $10,000 a month. Now we're hitting $20,000 a month. And it got to the point, you know, where I actually had to build in a webinar because I didn't have a team. So all these people were now trying to book on my calendar. I didn't have a team. And I was like, I got to slow this down. And so we used a webinar to start filter. But those are some of my favorite numbers to share about this journey.
That's awesome. I love it. So I think everyone is officially tantalized and really interested in learning now how these work. So kind of walk us through what is a quiz funnel? How does this process, what does this look like?
Yeah. So first thing I want to be very clear about, a quiz is not a survey. And I see people do that all the time. They say, I know all the questions that I'm going to ask, and they're asking survey stuff that people already know. For example, I know what my name is. I know how many husbands I have. I don't need to take your survey to figure that out, right? So when we talk about a quiz, we're talking about using behavior-based questions to really dive into the heart and the motives of your ideal people, and to also give you some data and feedback. So that's the whole crux of this thing. And so I see a lot of people, you know, slapping on a templated quiz, you know, for things, and that doesn't work as well. For example, we had somebody that was coming to us saying, hey, you know, I have this quiz and people aren't buying my product. So I said, well, what's your quiz? And her quiz was, what goddess are you? So let me ask a question. If you took a quiz that said, which goddess are you? What do you think the person would be selling?
Like some aphrodisiac perfume, essential oil stuff, or something that's based on the goddess that I am, or something.
Well, she was selling skincare.
Like regular skincare? Like not like woo-woo something?
No, just skincare. Just, you know, buy my lotion. And I'm like, I don't see a quiz that says, what goddess are you? And feel like, oh yeah, that's going to make me buy lotion. But she had this templated quiz from one of the platforms, and she was like, I'm going to make this work. So, you know, you really, you know, it's just like with anything with marketing, you want to know who your audience is. You want to make sure that your quiz has a really good hook and a title that speaks to a problem they want solved. Because we're not talking about like your BuzzFeed quizzes, which Harry Potter house do you belong in? Like, that's cute. But that's not going to help people solve their problems. It's not going to help you be seen as an expert. And it's definitely not going to help you get real insight and information that you can use to make better decisions about your content, your marketing, your products. And when you ask the right quiz questions, right, got your hook, you've got great questions, you've got really good outcomes, and you've got really, really helpful results. Like, those are the major components of a quiz that help people feel like, wow, you gave me something I didn't have before I answered those questions. And now you're seen as a trusted advisor.
I think the difference there in the different types of questioning is that when you're asking something like what eyelashes are best for you, the type of person that takes that quiz is showing some sort of intent, right? Versus someone who's like, what Disney princess are you? Well, that's just a fun quiz. Like, I might even take that just to see, okay, well, am I Snow White or am I Sleeping Beauty or what am I? You know, just for fun. And I might post it online. But does that show any intent that I'm open to buying anything? Not really.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so that's why we make sure the main question and the main hook is something that people really want to know. One of my favorite quizzes was from an OBGYN, and the quiz was for women that she helped with their libido, and the quiz was called "Where Did My O Go?" Right? So, right? Are you having a libido problem because of are you stressed out? Are you dehydrated? Is there some medication that you're taking? But, we're able to have fun with it, but we're still giving people helpful information, right? Because their intent is to solve that problem. I'm having a libido issue. If you could help me figure out what this might be, I'm more prone to take the next step with you over somebody who just said, book an appointment.
That's powerful. And I think having what comes to my mind when you talk about the main question that the quiz is solving is all of the conversations people should be having with their target audience, and what are the questions that keep coming up from them. Yeah, what are they saying that they're struggling with? What are they trying to figure out? And that sounds to me like exactly what you should be putting as sort of your hook and your offer into the quiz.
Absolutely. You want them to get a quick win, or you want them to get something that they didn't know before. Right? Because these are people, yes, at some point they're searching for information. And I guess this also depends too on where they are in a cycle, because you can use a quiz in different places. If you're just using it to get awareness, like we work with a lot of authors and they just really want to bring more awareness because they need to grow a list really, really fast for their book. And so that might be a little bit lighter version of a quiz because you're not trying to go too in depth. But then we've got people who, are using a quiz on the back end, and they're using it as an assessment option once people make a payment or once people are in their program, because now you're able to assess and give them feedback about what the things are that you're going to be able to help them with. So there's so many different ways to use quizzes, not just for lead generation, but for awareness campaigns. And then on the other side, like I said, for assessments and audits for existing clients. And that's another way to monetize it, right? Who hasn't taken the Strength Finders quiz? Right? The Strength Finder, Marcus Buckingham, the Strength Finder, or Sally Hogshead, her Fascinate quiz, and they give you the free version and then you get the paid version. So there's an upsell. So there's lots of different ways that you can use a quiz in your business.
Now, I'm kind of curious. Have you ever done a split test of a quiz versus just like a downloadable PDF of the same title, right? Like the what eyelashes are best for your face or whatever versus a PDF of how to choose the best eyelashes. Have you done a split test like that and see which has the better outcomes?
So which has the better outcomes? And I want you to be clear about which outcomes are you talking about?
Well, as far as opt-in rates or lead cost or even quality of leads, some of these may be more subjective than others, but
yeah, because I've done a test, but we didn't test it wasn't for that reason, right? Because the hook was still the hook. Right? Like people wanted to know, like, and one of the first ones that I did was, what's your bankable brilliance archetype, right? I was helping people figure out if they should be a coach or a consultant or behind the scenes, whatever. And when I gave it to them as a paper-based, I didn't get much engagement back. So, and that was the thing that was important, was I want you to take the next step. But if I give you something that's paper-based and now you've got to fill it out on your own, and now you've got to tally the scores, and now you've got to take the onus is on you to actually go send an email back to me with your information. That was laborious for people. But when you do it automated and it's electronic and they fill in the quiz and they get their answers immediately, and then there's a button that pops up on the page, I just saved them a ton of time, made it really easy for them to take the next step. So if, as far as opt-ins, we did see more opt-ins with the electronic quiz because some people like the download, doesn't get the PDF, or I don't really care about the PDF, right? But we saw more engagement on the back end with the electronic one because it was a simplified process.
I can definitely see that. And it's kind of just gamifying it too. Like people like to, be poking around and doing things. So I can see that working really well. I'm curious then on, in the typical lead gen sort of quiz funnel, what is that next step that you set it up? Because in my mind, if I just took a quiz and maybe I need, like it tells me what type of thing I need, but now I'm going to need to know how to do that thing. right? Like what do you usually set up as the next step? Is that like a book a call to discuss, like an eval sort of thing? Or is that like a low ticket offer? Or what do you typically do there?
It typically depends on what the strategy is. And that's part of what we do is we map out, like, what is your goal? You can use a quiz to build your Facebook group. So the next logical step would, hey, join my Facebook group. If you are selling low ticket, you can use it to funnel them to the right product. If you're selling high ticket, you're going to want them to take the next step. In our case, we had them watch the video, like take the quiz, watch a video, book a call, right? And so now we're qualifying, and then we're also giving them the opportunity to like learn more and to get all their questions answered before we take the next step. If you're selling courses, if you're a course creator, you may have a special limited time offer that, hey, you took our quiz for the next 4 hours, buy the course, blah, blah, blah. So it really depends on what your goal is and what your intent is as to what that next step is going to be.
Have you run any stats or seen anything on like, this is, for these type of people, this has provided the best results or the best statistics on the all the way through if we follow this specific process after the quiz?
It varies so much because of how people do their business. Like I said, if somebody is trying, like we have a client right now that's an e-commerce client, and she doesn't have people buy her product directly because her product is very expensive. So she sells, her products is like between $60 and $80. And if I'm just finding out about your product, it's going to be hard for me to spend $60 to see if your hair product works. But I will join your community. And then so we're seeing like she's spending a nominal amount on ads, and she's getting at least 300 to 350 people every single month that are taking her quiz and joining her Facebook group. And in that group, now she's able to invite them to like a training call that she does. And now she's able to like nurture those relationships. So again, it depends on what your business model is. It depends on who your audience is. We had somebody that was in insurance, and their quiz was super, super simple because the only qualification they had was the person had to have a job, right? That was it. And so for that, it was really about, hey, take this quiz and we just want your information, because they're not going to wait for you to call them. They're going to call you. So their model was very different from somebody who's going to have a long nurturing process. So it really gets tailored to what your business model is, what your lead gen and follow-up system is, and ultimately what your goal is.
Are there any niches where these quizzes work better than others? Or are there any niches where they just don't really seem to work at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think they always work well with low ticket offers. And the reason is because you're targeting people who have low intent, right? Like they just, if you didn't have a quiz, they would probably still buy a low ticket offer anyway. So now you just put something in front of them doing it, right? They're information seekers. And if I'm just looking for information and not looking for to really solve a problem, I'm going to get your information from your quiz and I'm going to be done, right? And so that's the thing that I think a lot of people, they want to grow their list fast, and it's great, but for the time and for the energy that it takes to put the quiz together, you're going to look, your ROI is going to be a lot longer. Is what we say in that case. Not that it's not going to happen, just going to take a lot longer. Where it works best and really well is when you have companies that actually solve a really, really urgent problem, right? Like the eyelashes, for example, right? And the great thing about her success story was it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? And so what did these people need to be on Zoom calls? Eyelashes. Right. And so you think about the trajectory, but I mean, she did amazing. I mean, in that first year, she went on to be on Shark Tank and ended up getting funded. I mean, she made like 7 figures, right, in that business but there was a lot of things in that storm, right, that made that work. But if you've got something urgent, like, for example, if you have like diet stuff, or if you have medication, like not medications, but like vitamins or something that people need to solve a problem, and you're helping them choose the right one, like which what is that stuff called? Which CMOS is right for you, right? It's a popular thing, right? For a minute. Which kind of CMOS product is right for you? Should it be in a pill form? Should it be in this form? These are people that they want it and they just don't know which one to use. And so now you're guiding their choices. And those tend to work really well because I didn't know what to do before. You told me what to do, so now I'm going to do what you told me to do.
So another question I have is just like logistically, I know there's a lot of apps and softwares out there that will do quizzes or some sort of a form or something like that. Do you have a software or an app that you recommend that people use to create these quizzes with? Or is there just anyone will do?
Anyone won't do. No. There are some that make it a little bit more harder to calculate things on the back end. And, in this day and age, nobody wants to try to calculate a quiz score manually, download it to a Google file, then have it. No, we don't want to do any of that. We want something that's going to do it. And so my favorite tools, and we've got a whole cheat sheet on this, but our favorite tools are ones that, number one, they're going to integrate and play with our other toys nicely, right? They have to be able to talk to each other. It has to look good, right? You don't want something that looks janky and that looks cheap because it's going to reflect on your brand. It has to be easy for people to navigate and use. And the fourth thing is that you want something that's going to be as flexible as we need it. Is it going to let us do logic? Is it going to let us tag people? I've seen quizzes that are quiz platforms that are like $10 a month, but they only will give you the result of the quiz and not the answers to the questions. Well, now I'm losing all that data. Right? Because we ask different questions in the quiz. We ask qualifying questions, validating questions, identity questions. And so if I don't get that information to come over to my CRM, what's the point? I need more than an email address. So yeah, I've got the two favorite tools that I always recommend to people. Number one is Try Interact. It's very easy to use. It's very simple to use. It's a little bit more on the expensive side because it's a monthly fee associated with it, but by far, one of the easiest to use. And the other tool that I really like is Smart Quiz Builder. For anybody who's ever heard of Digital Access Pass, that membership program, it's the same company that does Digital Access Pass, and they have a Smart Quiz Builder, and it's a WordPress plugin. So if you're using WordPress and you don't want a monthly subscription, it's one of the best tools that you can use for your quiz.
Yeah. So on the back end of these quizzes, so the intent is that you're actually tallying up their responses to give them a different assessment at the end. Is that right?
Yes, to give them an outcome at the end based on how they answer the questions.
And so these software programs, because I know we've worked with clients that have tried to do quizzes in the past, and it's not something that we're really expert in. So we've run across a few where it'll ask questions, but then at the end there's no assessment, right? There's no way to tally up the score, or it does tally up the score, but it doesn't let you customize the output at the end, and you have to somehow email that to them, or like you said, manually create that and send it out. So yeah, having a good software that's going to automate that, I think, is going to save you a ton of time.
It is. It's going to make it very easy for you to collect the data. And, if people get excited about quizzes because, okay, listen, we're all a little bit narcissistic, right? We all want to know something about ourselves. But as an entrepreneur, what we get excited about is I got data. If your traditional lead magnet, the only thing you know about a person is their name and their email address, and maybe if you're lucky, their phone number. How are you supposed to personalize and customize your marketing if that's all you know? You have no other information. But if you ask the right questions, you've got data that's going to tell you, okay, this is where their biggest gap is, or this is what they've tried before, or this is what we can really step in and offer them because of how they answer the question. And that's the beauty of data. But you've got to look at it that way. It's not just about the novelty of a quiz. It really is about data. And data, they say content is king, data is the emperor.
So if someone's going to sit down and they've kind of done a little market research, they know what their main question is that their prospects would really want to know the answer to. Do they just kind of map it out on paper first, on Visio, or what is sort of the mapping process? Or you just jump into one of those apps and they kind of guide you through that part?
Oh, that's a great question. Do not jump into one of the apps. You always want to map it out first, right? For God forbid something happens to the app and then you have no quiz. And I've had that happen to people because they'll come to me to help them fix their quiz, and it'll go back in 6 months later and their account is closed and any data that they had is gone because they never wrote down a question somewhere else. So yeah, you do want to map it out. You want to, and here's a really great tip. Do not ever start with your quiz questions. That is the number one way to make sure your quiz flops, because people will say, I know all the questions that I want to ask. And then they're like, well, how do we get them to connect to the outcomes? You start with the outcomes first. And then you build questions that allow you to filter back that way. And for people that are using things like ChatGPT, you've got a whole ChatGPT quiz up is what it's called. And it's a whole system of ChatGPT prompts that will guide you through the process of creating your hook, your outcomes, your questions, and you follow that process. It gives you everything you need for your entire quiz funnel.
What's kind of a good number of questions to ask for one of these quizzes?
And that's a great question. My background is actually in instructional design. That's what I did. Barnes and Noble, lead pages. I was designing training programs. And part of what I got to do was build assessments, right? So that's where a lot of this comes from. I've seen people create these assessments or these quizzes that are like 28 questions long, and ain't nobody got time for that. I'm not, because most people are taking a quiz on their phone. So we're not going to sit on our phone for 28 questions. We're just not going to do it. So you do want to keep your questions. We'd like to stay between 7 and 10. 12 is like the absolute max, unless, and here's the caveat, unless it's a paid assessment or audit where you need to go deeper. Right? If you're doing a deep dive audit or assessment, and I'll give you this other tip. If you are working with a B2B audience, don't call it a quiz. Call it an assessment or a scorecard or an audit, because they don't want something that sounds as frivolous as a quiz. It's the same technology, same framework. Just want to call it something different. But if you're building like a scorecard or an assessment, it is going to be a little bit deeper than a lead generation quiz, which is supposed to be quick and dirty.
To the extent that you're comfortable doing so, brag on yourself for a moment. Tell us, like, what has produced for you and your business?
Well, that very first outing, of it, like I said, it helped us go from that $5,000 to, 5 figures, every single month, in our business. I'm never at a loss for leads, right? We've got ads that we're running in the background and things that we're always pulling in people. So we've always got those leads. And I love that about us, because anytime any of the platforms go down, I'm not worried. We've got people that we can follow up to, and we've got people that we can reach out to. Being able to build an email list, right? Super, super fast. Like I said, in that first 4 months, we, added 9,000 people to our email list. And anytime I want, I feel like I can magically turn that on and leave that running. And now, again, we're never going to be at a loss for leads. The other thing that it's done for us is it's helped me and the people that we work with, it's helped us get really, really good at understanding who our audience is. We don't have to sit there and guess, well, I wonder what else I can offer. Go look at your data and find out. Right? Information that you have and make an informed decision. So it's helped us get really, really smart about what the next steps are as we want to evolve our business and want to grow into something else.
So for someone who is definitely wants to try this out, get their quiz funnel going, like, what would be one piece of advice that you'd really want to leave with them?
Oh gosh, if they really want to get things going, do the foundational work first. Like, the worst thing I've seen is people that are trying to create a quiz when they don't really know what their offer is. They haven't really figured out who their audience is, and they don't know. And because they don't know who their audience is, they don't really know what quiz to create. And another carry on that is, whatever lead magnet you do, please have a traffic strategy for it. Do not just create a quiz because it's cute and then you let it sit there and collect dust because you didn't think in the beginning, well, how am I going to get people to the quiz? You got to take all that stuff into consideration if you're going to get a real return on the investment.
Like, that was an amen right there, because I think a lot of people, they find this like really cool thing and they think it's everything. It's like, no, it's a great thing. However, if you don't have that foundation of who you help, how you help them, all of these core things, even the core systems to sell, like, you ain't going to do anything with that lead anyway. So, like, let's get some of that core stuff. And then when you're ready to dial in, you know how you're going to drive traffic, but you want just a juicier, you want to try some different things on some generating cheaper leads or test some different stuff. Then, okay, let's try out this quiz funnel and see what we can do with it. So I think that is very wise. I appreciate that. Well, we appreciate you so much, Tai. This has been a great conversation. If people are interested to learn more about you, where should they head?
They should head to Quiz and Grow Rich. That's the quizandgrowrich.com. They can take quizzes there. They can get our 151 quiz ideas. Like there's a whole like little starter packet that they can get more information if they're curious. And we even have a quiz on quizzes. So, because there's actually 5 different types of quizzes. So take the quiz and figure out which quiz you want to start with and go from there.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll have the links to that in the show notes and description. Thank you so much for being with us, Tai. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.